Isaac.
Hello, Kay.
Welcome back to the Kay and Isaac podcast.
Yes.
What episode are we on now?
15? 14?
Something like that.
It's in the teens.
I feel like it's 15.
15?
15 sounds right.
Okay.
You want to go ahead with pyramids?
Some stuff going on.
Yeah.
Probably the most interesting scientific discovery in a long time, I would say. So, based off my decent amount of research, it sounds like they used that SAR system. So, a radar system. Okay, this is over in Egypt, just to get the audience up to speed here. They did a scan underneath the pyramids, and they found that there actually are compartments significantly dug down underneath the pyramids. They're talking over almost a mile long.
Yeah.
And they're thinking about 8 pillars that have like coil designs on them.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's actually layers underneath those pillars.
Yeah.
So how they haven't seen this before, never explored underneath, I don't know. I don't know the history of how that works, but very interesting, I would say, the least. Just kind of see what the Egyptians were doing back in the day when we still don't fully understand what they were doing with the pyramids themselves and how they did them so many years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I think if all of the rumors are true, because I haven't done any type of research on it, I don't know exactly what the primary source of this information getting out. I've just heard it around on different podcasts.
I will clarify. Apparently, this was a research document that went out and was peer reviewed by other scientists to show that it was accurate information. Now, I saw have you seen the radar scans themselves?
I've seen pictures of it.
So I don't know how they make out that this is what it is, because now there's like animated drawings of what they think it looks like. So I don't, based off, but I'm not a radar person, so I don't have a clue what it would, how you see that. But so it was. This is like scientific proof that this is what's down there. Now they don't necessarily know what that means, but
yeah, I mean, even just the vastness of it. If they kind of misunderstand what it's made out of or misunderstand somewhat the shape, but if they get the length below the ground surface level, I mean, that alone could, obviously it has a lot of implications, because like here's one theory that I've heard from a buddy of mine. They believe that the pyramids used to absorb the shock waves of like earthquakes or any type of natural disasters or whatever. Absorb it, turn it into like frequencies that then got used for energy that would be compared to like electricity.
Yeah, I've heard the energy piece as well. Not to that extent, but I have heard that that's what it was designed to do.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just recently heard this from my buddy. So, I mean, this is his theory. I don't know. He's also very huge into frequency type stuff. Shout out to Beagle if you watched this episode. I don't know if he ever would, but if he did, shout out to you. We always go Beagle. Yeah, his name's Nathan Beagle. Everyone just calls him Beagle.
Isn't Beagle a dog? But that's fine. Go ahead.
But we always trade conspiracy theories, and he's huge on frequencies. He thinks that the ancient Egyptians not only built the thing due to their understanding of frequencies, but also believes that it absorbs shock waves that create frequencies. That's what he thought the pyramids was.
So the energy piece, though, that's the part. What would it be creating energy for? Is really the question, because they didn't have electricity as we know it today. So what would that be translating to? I mean, I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be able to imagine whether you want to label it as advanced technology or the way I kind of see it would be like a separate pathway of technology.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's probably tiers to technology. The first understanding of like iron was to create a sword, Now we can create skyscrapers from it. So there's tiers to how you're using individual materials.
Right.
If they were using different materials with different physics, different understanding of maybe frequencies that makes weight no longer an object, then I think that they probably had things that we wouldn't be able to comprehend that are probably fueled by energies that we don't understand as well.
True. So to me, the next question is what's next? Because obviously you don't want to disrupt what's already there, because that in and of itself, one, we still can't really explain how they ever built the things with some of those stones weighing, thousands and thousands of pounds. We don't necessarily understand
Tons,
that.
man.
So could they, first of all, Egyptians, how about you write something down so we understand what the heck you guys are trying to do? Because that's history. Maybe you don't realize it at the time that you're building something that we're going to look back on, thousands of years later and be like, what were you guys doing and why were you doing it? But write something down. That's not that hard. Second thing, could they do something to get underneath without disrupting the top? So could they, a mile away, start digging a tunnel that goes into where you can start getting underneath those without disrupting the foundation or messing with anything that's going up there, just to see what's down there? Because that would be an unbelievable, amazing way to explore something. Because it makes you wonder what is down there. Is it open space, or has it all been filled in? It makes it look like from the radar that it's still open.
Yeah, it looks like a hollowed structure.
Yeah.
There's a room down there that they've actually built out so nothing would collapse in on it. I'm not sure, but just to say, going back to your whole thing about Egyptians not writing anything down, look at our society today. We wrote a bunch of stuff down, but it's on paper and books. All it takes is one huge natural disaster, like some type of volcanic eruption, meteorite, or tsunami or something like that. And if it cleans off the surface of the United States of America with tidal waves or whatever, avalanches, just reshapes the structure. All that stuff that's buried underneath, everything, all of our buildings, everything is going to be gone basically. Probably within the 2000 or however. How long do they say the pyramids have been around?
I don't remember.
I think it's like 8,000 or something like that, isn't it?
It's a long time. I don't really remember the exact years, but it's a long time.
But I think that it would make sense that there's no writings anywhere.
So you're saying it's possible that they did at one point, but it's maybe has been lost. To even think, I know it's a movie, but Indiana Jones, they went to look for certain things in Egypt, and the Nazis were looking for it at the same time. So we know that during war, they definitely disrupted some of history, and they destroyed a lot of different things. So there's a chance that has already happened, or maybe it's out there and somebody just doesn't want to release it.
Yeah, the only things that are going to stick around through crazy stuff is in carvings in stone. Yeah. And they did that.
They did that.
Yeah, they have a lot of pictures and stuff, but they probably did have... if they're an actual advanced or separate path, advanced technological society, then I think that they would definitely have different forms of communicating that they probably weren't thinking, just like we don't nowadays. Yeah. They're probably not thinking, tomorrow the entire world's going to end for us, basically. Right. We're all going to die. We're going to get swept away, and whatever made the Egyptians, because that Sahara Desert right there, right? That goes to the Younger Dryas impact theory, which I've talked about before, that a meteorite struck and hit a solar or a polar ice cap, and all of the waves from that glacier, basically, that it hit just swept through the Sahara Desert and wiped everything out to the ocean.
Yeah, so there's definitely water markings to show that there was water that went through there at some point.
Yep, and that goes from the Egyptians all the way down to where they think ancient Atlantis was. Okay. And so maybe the Egyptians and Atlanteans were during the same time frame. There's a lot of different wacky tinfoil conspiracy stuff, but everything is a conspiracy until it gets proven.
It's fun to think about, and their point that they did draw things and etch things into their walls, and I think we're still spending our time trying to decipher what those things actually meant, because some of those shapes and some of those things are very odd compared to certain things that we have now. It looks like they're symbols of almost like helicopters, symbols of spaceships, and weird things that you wouldn't expect to see on a wall in Egypt back in that time that they would never have seen before. So it makes you wonder, maybe if they do dig a little bit underneath that pyramid, maybe there's some aliens living under there or something.
Yeah, I mean, back to that, I do think it would probably be possible to build underneath. I don't know how thick the structure would be. If you could get sonar to be able to determine how thick the object is, like what if it's just an entire cement block and it's just meant to anchor it right there, right. And through anything, since it's buried that deep in, the top side would never move. It's going to be there forever.
Right.
Like, what if it's that simple of a theory? Or what if it actually is, like people say, it could be some type of factory or plant or whatever, and that bottom all the way underneath the actual structure is just a waste dump, and they pump all of whatever waste they get from producing energy, whatever waste that is.
Yeah.
And what if it's like super radioactive?
It could be.
And we drill all the way down there, and someone's like, we just got to break through this to see what it is. And they're chiseling away, right? They chiseling away, and then just boom, radioactivity just takes Egypt off the map. No one could ever go there again.
Okay. Well, there's your hat. There's your tinfoil hat.
I'm just saying, what if? We don't know anything.
We don't. But I think that's the fun part about it, is when you start seeing stories like this, again, it makes you dig even farther about what they were doing in history. Yeah. Obviously, you would assume that in certain things like this, just like, I don't know, people would assume that what we're doing now, everybody's doing something for a purpose. So there's a reason behind they did this. Now, it may be that they just screwed up the first time, and so they just built something on top of it. Could be an option. I don't know. But the thought of just being able to just see it, I want to physically go in and see what's down there, I think would be just fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Even with the risk that it could kill you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a risk that I'm going to get in a wreck on my drive tomorrow. So
that's true.
Why not go risk to find something that could be historically fascinating and interesting, I think.
You know what you remind me of? You remind me of all like the alien movies where there's always like the stereotypical doctor that's like, no, we must complete the research, and then the sucker jumps on their face and they're dead. It's like, now your research wasn't worth anything because you're dead.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that far.
That's what it just reminds me of.
Yeah, that does happen, and I think it's in like every alien movie. But fascinating stuff. We'll see what it turns into. I mean, hopefully it doesn't. It's like 5 years later, they're like, oh, here's what we found. Hopefully they figure a few more things out. But once you see something like that, you would think they would want to do some more deep research to find out what's going on down there.
I mean, look, I think about all of the potential changes that could come from a discovery like that, and what it actually is. How many changes that could happen to society. And here's my tinfoil hat again. I think those who are in power would not want that change to happen. I think, the thing that makes me believe this is all of the, I guess, rumors of people who've been able to create energy that is fully self-sustainable. Like, we don't have to produce waste from that. We don't have to have it cost something for that waste, or for that energy, I mean. And so if they're assassinating people who are creating those things, like that has happened, there's a lot of rumors.
There are a lot of rumors, yes.
Then I would think that something like that, what's under the Great Pyramids, if it was some type of energy producing thing,
if they find out that
it's going to be just like JFK's murders.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, oh, we'll tell you next week, and a month goes by.
Yep. And the other part is, I don't know what Egypt's rules are, because here in the United States, you'd probably have to have 1,000 permits to even try to go down there and see what it is. Might be a little bit more relaxed over there, probably.
I doubt it.
Maybe, I don't know. But you are messing with 3 historical masterpieces, and they are not going to want that to be touched. You can't even climb on those things.
What if like, someone from the ancient Egyptian days that created those pyramids, what if somehow they had hopped in a time machine and poofed their way all the way up here to 2025 and was looking around at us and seeing people who are like, no, don't touch the pyramids, they're historical, we must just look at it. What if they look at us and they're like, you idiots, if you just flip the switch that's underneath the soil, everyone on this entire planet could live for 3,000 years if they wanted to.
Yep.
And you guys are just sitting there staring at it, idolizing it.
Well, we welcome you to come back from the past and join us in the future.
I'm just saying, what if, you know?
Have Doc come get you. Marty will meet you at the point. And, hey, I don't know. I mean, it'd be very interesting.
I think that's how they would look at us, man. They would look at us like, you just people pay to walk
Around
up next to it.
Yeah.
People are making money from this, and you're using that money to go buy food and stuff. But if you just turn this on, no one needs to eat anymore. Just something ridiculous.
Yeah, could be.
No, that'd be crazy. But I'm curious to see what's gonna come of this. You know, there's been like no news, basically, like in my entire lifetime, that's like new about the Great Pyramids. I mean, you learn more about it. You start understanding there's patterns and the precision of which they created these things. But that's all stuff that's been around. Now we've actually discovered that there's something underneath it.
Yeah.
And
that far down is what's amazing to me.
Yeah.
It's 600 meters is what they said. And that's just, I think, to get to that's not the full thing. That's just the pillars themselves,
the coils or whatever.
Which is, I mean, again, they didn't have tools and stuff like that where they had, big cranes and things.
I mean, you've seen the thing. They carried all those tons worth of weight on logs and dragging it across logs. They take the log from the back and put it down in the front.
Supposedly, that's what happened.
I don't believe it one bit. So
yeah, we'll see what
I think that this has definitely been something that everyone who has a little bit of common sense would look at and be like, no, they're actually pretty smart. They're not just some ancient Neanderthal type people, civilized or not, but pitchforks and swords and...
Yeah, I think they're way beyond their time.
Yeah, I really think they would probably be more advanced than us.
Yep. Some people think that too.
But not advanced enough to stop themselves from getting swept over with an ocean.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So if you haven't heard that story, we encourage you to go do a little research, at least read up a little bit on it, because it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Go a little bit farther.
Yep. All right, what's the next topic here, man? It's Saturday, so we're not doing sports. All the political or scientific, like we kind of just did.
I got
geographical
a few things, I guess. It's not interesting. I guess it is interesting. So we had talked. The reason why we want to talk about it is we talked about it on a previous podcast. Is Trump's gold card? Yeah. Yep.
So he's selling gold cards for $5 million, right?
$5 million,
and it's supposed to basically give you a cleaner pathway to citizenship.
It's fast-tracking citizenship for the extremely wealthy in hopes that they'll bring business here, create manufacturing here. I think it's to just kind of... It should create more opportunities for our citizens, I think, is the long-term goal. But he's also supposedly, as long as they stick with it, they're supposed to use that money to chop down our deficit, our debt, basically. And so from what the Treasury Secretary said, they've already sold 1,000 of those. So $5 billion worth, and they did it in like a week or two. I mean, it wasn't like a very long time. So there were people that were interested. Now, again, we haven't seen any documentation about this. We have just heard from the Treasury Secretary that this is what they've done. So we're going to take them at their word. But
oh, God. Be careful doing that.
Any government person at their word. But if that's true, you had 1,000 people interested. That's $5 billion. Again, the hope is that they take that $5 billion and they pay down our debt. And then it's also going to be interesting to see how many more they sell after that.
So 1,000 makes $5 billion.
Yep.
So I wonder how much it would take to get to that 5 trillion mark. It'd be what, 100,000, or is it 1 million? They'd have to sell 1 million of them to get 5 trillion.
I don't know why you asked me to do math in my head. Even
I'm
though
pretty sure it's
zeros,
a million.
It's just, it's too much for my head.
So I'm just thinking it's been, what, maybe 2 weeks and they've gotten that 1,000, would you say?
I think that's what they said when they first opened it up, yeah.
So a little bit of math, okay? You got about 4 weeks in a month. So that's about 2,000 people. If you're getting that a month and you have 12 months in a year, that's 24,000 people that you would need to get. And then that's about in a year. So if that's what you're getting in a year, he's not going to reach that landmark of getting 5 trillion. That's my math.
Yes, that sounds great. I lost you when you said 5 trillion, so I don't know where you are. But yeah, I don't. It's probably a lofty goal. Maybe it's not something that's going to happen. But to be honest, any money that you can bring in on as simple as that.
Well, it depends on what they do with it. But
yep, as long as they're taking that money, breaking down the debt, I think
it should immediately go into taxes.
Go into taxes.
Yeah, as in we don't have to pay taxes anymore because it's paid due to the gold cards.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't think they're going to do that.
I know they're not going to do that, but that's what should happen. Any type of little extra money we get, just take that relief from the people.
Well, did we talk about that last time? About the 150,000 or less?
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah. I mean,
still haven't heard much about that, but I mean that's still a possibility. So clearly, you and I make less than that. And
we talking what? Me?
Most people in the country make less than $150,000.
You haven't seen my sports book betting numbers yet, so
that's in the negative.
That's why you think
you owe them money, actually.
Oh crap!
But yeah, I think, like I said, even if it's just a little bit, if that's the only thing that we get, if you're putting that money to pay the debt down and make it to where we don't owe trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, which we'll never come up with in any other way. I don't know how we would even do it. I think it's a good thing.
Tariffs.
And there's a lot of people that, are upset about it because they feel like he's just catering to the wealthy. But a lot of times it's the wealthy that create jobs and create opportunities for us minimal people.
Well, I think there's stereotypes on both sides. I mean, you have the stereotype of the super rich dude that does not care about the bottom worker, that treats them poorly, pays them whatever wage is going to be able to just get them by. You have that stereotypical boss that people see in America.
Now, let me ask you this question. Do you think there's a lot of owners and CEOs that are like that?
I do.
I do. I don't know. I start to see, and obviously I think the other side's going to be more highlighted than the ones that you're talking about right now. Mm-hmm. But I see a lot of owners and CEOs where they actually do care a lot about their employees. And I think it's harder for them to show it when they're at the top and it's a huge company. But
yeah, well, I think in those instances, I mean, obviously you have small business and then you have big business. Big business more so is what I'm trying to paint a picture for that people see it in, which is really a representation of America, especially when it comes into the eyes of politics. When you have, your owner of your mom and pop store has no sway whenever it comes to the election, but Jeff Bezos and Amazon, based off of whatever opinions he publicly posts, whatever political party that belongs to, he's going to get hit or he's going to get bumps in his stuff, depending on whose side they're on. So that's the oligarchs for us. And that reminds me of a conversation I was having with my buddy the other day, that we were kind of both, and this is my super liberal buddy, Brandon, but we both kind of agreed, and we were having a conversation where we were both agreeing, the same oligarchs that may benefit, or people are saying might benefit from this administration under Trump, were also people who were benefiting in the last election with Biden.
Correct.
It's like the oligarchs, they can just switch teams like that. They don't have to stay in the Democratic Party or stay in the Republican Party. Now, it could hurt their branding, but I mean, just to give you some examples, obviously Jeff Bezos with the Washington Post, and how that switched around. Obviously, Mark Zuckerberg, who's announcing that he's going to be going to community notes instead of actually censoring people on Facebook. Yep. So, I mean, he's turned a page.
That changed in a month.
Both of these people just 4 years ago, whenever we were just getting into that Biden administration, we're team blue no matter who. Like, they were part of that squad. They were part of the Democratic, and now look at them all. They're hated by the Democratic Party. They've switched a leaf like that. Yep. So me and my buddy Brandon were talking about that, and, you know, that's the society we're in, where oligarchs are going to be able to benefit because we're in a capitalist society.
Yeah. I mean, what that speaks to is the one thing that ruins our country in a way, and that's just, it's money. It all goes back to money. So if they feel like they can benefit by going this direction, then they're probably going to go that direction. So it makes you wonder if Republicans lose in 4 years, are they just going to go back to where they were before Trump came in? Well,
I don't know. I think the Democrats are still taking hits just because how they're kind of operating as business as usual, even after the huge mandate of this last presidency. I mean, obviously that's just language that Trump uses a lot. He's like, well, I have a national mandate. Everyone wants me to do this. That's just terminology. Like, we voted, ultimately at the end of the day, we voted for you because we liked you more than the other person. Like, that's what most voters are thinking about. There might be individual topics that they kind of hone in that change their mind, but
like is probably maybe not the right word. We don't like him more. I think we think he's going to be better for the country than the other person.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Yeah. I mean, like him in terms of being our president of the United States.
So I would say a lot of people probably don't like Trump, but they trust him with our economy more than they do somebody else.
I would say I don't like Trump, but I would say I like him more than Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
Well, we never really figured out who she was. That's a whole other conversation, but she was just a talking head for... ideas I don't even think she really even believed in.
And that's the thing with me, though. Like, if I can see that you're just a talking head, then that is who you are. You're someone that would become that talking head. You're somebody that's going to do what the people behind you are telling you to do in your earpiece.
Yeah, not the citizens of the country, but the people that are up, where you are.
And then, obviously, after watching the last 4 years under the Biden administration, like, she was right there, too. So, a lot of the, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, for some reason, that would say that was the best 4 years of their life under that Biden administration. I would not. I'm not one of those people. And so I know that Kamala Harris was in that group that was in the White House. And so she's partially to blame, along with every congressperson that was passing these bills, and then the big old man himself, Biden. Like, they're to blame with a lot of, what the last 4 years, a lot of the bad things that have happened that have come out of that. But I don't know, speaking of the Democratic Party, we kind of just talked about it earlier, but with AOC and Bernie Sanders taking the reins of the Democratic Party pretty much, that's all I'm seeing on Twitter. And they're like, with his experience and with her powerful voice, we have a chance to get this next election.
I don't see it.
No? You don't see it?
I mean, I think AOC, she's shot herself in the foot more times than anybody I think of in that party. And I don't think she's as popular as people want to make her out to be.
Yeah.
And she just says she almost comes across as a Kamala Harris kind of feel, to where when she's in interviews, she doesn't have good answers for anything. She just kind of dances around stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And Bernie was a guy that I think I respected for a while, and he seemed to have some good ideas he never really had ideas of how he's going to accomplish these things or how it was going to be, like, actually take place, but they were good ideas. So, like, free healthcare, free college, I think those ideas are good ideas, but he never really explained how we were going to do them.
Yeah.
But then he just kind of, he turned into a completely different person, and again, they don't seem like people that we can really trust to move us in the right direction.
They need to clean house out there. I mean, I remember Bernie Sanders. I think it was probably when I was in college. So it was probably that 2020 election, or no, it was like 2016 or something. When was it that he was like almost up there with the Democrats?
Yep, it's when they basically booted him out and put Biden in place.
Yeah. I remember during that time frame when the Democrats were basically calling him a socialist wacko. Mm-hmm. And now he's leading the charge of their party while they're calling the other person that won a fascist dictator, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Our politics is so sloppy and messy. We need a clean house. I think that, have whatever opinions you want about what the dude's doing, but he's doing a lot in this administration.
Yeah.
And if I'm someone who's like, we should just clean house and start over, then that's kind of going my direction.
Yeah. I mean, you still see just some random terrible things happening. I mean, you've got the whole Tesla thing. People are now attacking Teslas and
I really think
breaking them down, starting them on fire. Like, there's now like conservative people who are going to Tesla dealerships and they're protecting them day and night to make sure.
Really?
Yeah, I just saw it.
I'm gonna protect this land
to make sure. I mean, to me, I don't understand. There's an individual that you maybe don't agree with his decisions. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
We all have those people, and I mean, I don't necessarily agree with everything that Jeff Bezos does, but it doesn't stop me from buying anything from Amazon. And I'm not going to see an Amazon truck and I'm just going to blow it up and set it on fire. I don't understand that mindset.
When did it become so like valuable in society to like only support things like products, I guess I would say, only support products that are aligned with your beliefs, aligned with what you think someone should be like?
Yeah.
Like, when did that become a thing?
There's been pushes, I think, here and there, because like you'll hear a lot. I've heard a lot of it being in the field that I'm in, of people not supporting like large box chain stuff. So like, don't shop at Walmart. Go to a small business.
Mm-hmm.
That's better for your economy. Your money stays more in town instead of going out to all these corporations. So you hear that part,
that's a little different though.
But there's nothing like that. Like, that's not to where they're blowing up Walmarts because they don't.
Oh, right.
They don't shop there.
I mean,
know.
that's
vandalism.
A
completely different like step that people are taking now.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, when did things become so serious that you stop supporting a product, or even worse, like you're talking about, you vandalize products? But like, I don't feel like it's been that way. Like, I feel like I'm kind of from a generation, or maybe it's just me myself. I mean, who knows? But where, like I've talked about before, Kanye says a lot of stupid stuff that I disagree with. Yeah. I would still listen to his new album. I think he's a great rapper. You know, it's stuff like that. Like, I understand people might have personal experiences that would prevent them from like, oh, I can't support someone that would think or align like that. I kind of just view them as stupid and ignorant, but they make a good product. Like, not everyone's going to be smart. I don't know what to tell them.
Yeah, well, I don't know if everybody's able to make that distinction. Well, clearly they're not. I think it's you've got extremes on both sides, going both directions. And in this case, it's just an extreme to where not only do they not agree with him, they hate the guy, they hope he dies, they hope his family's destroyed.
That's just
and they
over
want all
the top.
His business completely destroyed. And it just... And again, I can't... Although that is terrible, I can't wrap my mind around why they don't like what he's doing when, first of all, that's all they talked about during the campaign trail was, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go in and we're going to tear a lot of this stuff down because there's fraud, there's waste, there's all these things in it that is costing you, the citizen, all this money. And it's your money going to just completely wasteful things. And yet, for all of a sudden, that's suddenly a problem. Now, I understand there's certain people losing their jobs. That's not fun. We know what it's like not to have a job and try to find one. That's extremely difficult.
Yeah, welcome to the real world.
But if, you get fired from somewhere, that doesn't mean you go burn the place down.
Yeah.
That doesn't... I don't know how that registers that that's a likely and appropriate response to that.
I feel like a regular person, if they got fired, they probably go home, sit around for a couple of days, kind of reflect, dang, I got fired. And then that third day, it's time to find a new job.
Get back on the horse.
It's time to find a new, and then you move on. Because my whole thing always at my jobs is I'm not going to work for someone that doesn't want me to be there.
Yeah.
That's always been how I felt. If they're making it clear and obvious they don't want me there, then I'm not going to work there. If they're the person that's in control of me being there. Yeah. I've probably had coworkers before that'd be like, they don't want me here, but Actually, probably not. I'm a nice guy.
No, you probably do.
No, pretty much everyone likes me. I'm sure there's a couple that talk crap behind my back.
There's probably more than a couple.
But anyways, if I was a government official and the government fired me, I'm just going to find another job. And I'm like, I'm done working in government. They don't want me there.
Yep.
Whatever.
And so it does suck for those thousands of people, because it's a big number from what I've heard. But for the rest of the country that is watching these, this is not necessary. So here's the thing, and I talked about this last time. Anybody in business, let's say you go in and you take over let's just say, I know grocery stores. So you take over a local grocery store. Your first response is to go in and say, is everything that we are doing efficient? Is there an efficient manner? Are we buying what we need to? Are there certain things that we're not selling that are sitting on the shelf that we probably need to get rid of? There's a clearing piece to where you say, we're doing 100 things great, but we're also doing 10 things that are costing us a serious amount of money, and it's not good for the business, so we need to get rid of those 10 things. And some of those 10 things might be people.
Exactly.
Where it's like, we
Greg just sits on his phone. He's never stocking the shelves when he's supposed to.
And we don't need 4 people at night. We only need 3. I'm sorry, Jerry, but we no longer need you.
You can't get Jerry on morning shift?
We're covered. We're already good.
Afternoon? Okay, I'll switch from full-time to part-time. I really need this job.
You can go collect cards. How about that?
At minimum wage. We're cutting your salary.
So that is good business. That's just good business. And when you have a businessman go into the White House and has a better understanding this time than he did last, which we've talked about before, of how the system works, he's going to make good, in my opinion, he's going to make good business decisions that he thinks is best for the country. Yeah. And that's what in my opinion, that's what they're doing. Yeah. And I get that it's hurting people's, as my grandma used to say, it's hurting their pocketbooks. I get it. It's hurting your wallets. Okay, but it's also, in the long term, we're hoping it's helping your wallet, because you're not spending, our government's not just giving money out like it's
helping our kids' futures. Helping our kids' futures. I mean, it's really the future generations that we're going to be digging holes in. That's the thing. Everyone only sees right here. And they're like, well, right now I can barely get by and still buy McDonald's and rent that movie I want to watch at night. So I'm not going to do anything too drastic. But it's finally someone got in the White House like, no, we need to do something drastic. Otherwise, our kids, this is it for them. Because your parents were drastic, and they were like, well, our kid will survive. And then you survived, but look at you. I mean, rates of everything have been going up. I would say that we've slowly been getting into hard times. Like, that's the direction we're going. So it was a little bit harder because of, your parents' generation, my parents' generation. Then for us, it's like, okay, we're still living in the most wealthiest country in the world. So obviously you can always have that point of view and say, well, there's a lot worse out there. Yeah. But there's just so much going on in America right now where some people feel really blessed to be here, and this is a beautiful time to be alive. So much innovation, so much beauty in the world that we're able to see at our fingertips every day. And then you have the other side, like, I hate my existence. I don't want to be here anymore. Everyone's a bully, or everyone, hates LGBTQ people, or hates gay people, or hates black people, or there's always so much hate going around. Yeah. This is the worst of time. We literally have Adolf Hitler as our president right now. Like, people pulling out their hair. Yeah. And so you have the polar opposites in this country right now. But
I would say look at it as like surgery, for example. So I had a good friend of mine. We used to work together. He had a heart surgery about 6 months ago. He was out, and he realized he couldn't walk 5 steps without his chest hurting. They come to find out, like, he had 3 of his arteries that were almost completely blocked. You can, which is, our heart is currently blocked as a country because of all this money and waste and fraud and all this being spent. You can just let it happen to where, all right, well, that's just the way that it is, and then we die as a country, which is what would potentially happen, because we can default on these loans, and then what happens? people start coming after us because they want our money, and we're going to be
the entire
serious
world is going to join forces to battle the USA because they haven't paid up.
It sounds far-fetched, but it's a possibility that that's what can happen. And so, or we can go in and we can have surgery. We could clear those arteries, make it a healthier heart. Now, is it a long recovery? Yeah. I mean, it takes time to recover for heart surgery. Is it going to be painful? You bet. Is it going to take some time for you to like get back on your feet and like see the progress and see that the decision that you made actually benefits you in the long run? Mm-hmm. The correct answer is yes. And I think, now again, I'm not in the inner workings of the government, but from what I can see on our end, that's what's happening. And we're in the painful part of the surgery right now. And we're not even in recovery yet. I think we're slowly getting there. But it's just going to be painful now. And it's going to take some time.
Well, look, after the last 4 years, all I would say is if this is what the painful period is, then we're already doing pretty solid as a country. Okay? Because
surgery went well.
Last 4 years, I mean, think about it. COVID, everywhere was locked down, places shut. You couldn't hang out with your friends, kids wearing masks. Yep. Everyone was broke. There was no money. You know, people literally were being forced to take a vaccine in order to keep their jobs in certain parts of the country.
Play a sport, get into a country, stay a nurse.
That was around the time frame that like all these athletes just started dropping dead on the field, like in soccer around the world in different spots. But it was like actually young people dying in sports,
young healthy people.
And like I remember thinking, I've never heard of that. Like these are the pinnacle of athleticism and like health in society. Yeah. So there's been some painful periods. If this is the painful period that we have to go to in order to get on the right track where it's just getting better, then I've been here. I mean, we've been here. We're still coming out of this right now. And if this is what is supposed to hurt for the next administration, I'm all for it.
Yep. So speaking of which, there was one thing that was big in the news last week that people... I think it's very controversial, but when you look deeper into it, you see some reasoning behind it, and that was basically the deconstruction. It's not completely gone, but the deconstruction of the Department of Education. Now, you and I both worked in education before, and so we've seen like pieces of it, I guess. But I think, again, they looked at a system, one that was, in lots of opinions, has not helped our students get any better. Any better. I mean, they're now predicting that there's a 50% rate of kids that are graduating high school who cannot read efficiently. Yeah. 50% who can't read. Just like they can't read and comprehend a book.
That's okay. They can text and they can do text to hear and just hear the word.
Yeah, no, I know the technology is changing, so I certainly understand that piece, and I think education has not caught up to what technology is now doing. But
I don't think real quick, I don't think that schools should be trying to catch up to how technology can make things easier for us. I think learning has to be the hard way for you to actually learn something. Right. You know, I come from a time frame where they put projectors up on the screen and you would sit there and they'd print off like a little what do you used to call it? Like a guide?
Almost a stencil kind of or something.
Yeah, and it'd have like the words and you just had to fill in the words to show that you were paying attention. And as the teacher was pretty solid with it, they would let whatever video play or whatever lesson that they're saying, they would talk through it and then they'd point out that's the word right there. So, you know, that's the generation I come from, filling in stuff with pencil. When I became a teacher, man, everything's Chromebook. Yeah. I mean, everything's on the computer, written assignments, watch the video. If you go to the Canvas link, it's right there. You can just put in your own headphones, do it yourself. Yeah. I mean, that's not the same school that I grew up in, you know, and obviously cell phones plays a factor. Kids are, even at the level that I was teaching at, you know, at the, 7th, 8th grade level, even those kids have cell phones. They're on it in the back. They're not paying attention. And you know, the other experience that I'd want to talk about while we're on this point of the education, that the funding, I guess, that the government was giving towards schools, that was like how I got the job as an interventionist anyways. Like, it was that grant funding that was able to pay for my position. And so I see that it's going to be cutting a lot of jobs, but then I go and I look, and this is no knock on like my ability to teach, but a lot of the time I was not necessary in that building. Yeah. You know, there was things that I could do, and I took it serious to do these small little things, these interactions with kids every day, just being in the building, that could ultimately impact their lives in certain ways. But at the same time, there was other times I would have entire periods to myself, and I would just be sitting there watching the new episode of One Piece that dropped or something in the middle of the class. Or that was when I started writing my book. I would spend probably 2-3 hours a day just being able to do that with all the downtime I had from children.
Right.
And I think technology is a huge part of that, because a lot of times I was being a substitute, and it's like, just go to the Canvas link, click the link, you're going to watch this video, take the notes online as you're doing it, because they have like fill-in things in their Google Chromebook or whatever. I mean, I really didn't get the technology aspect of things, to be honest with you. It's still over my head. I'm not very good with technology. Old enough nowadays, man. There's so much new stuff out here. But yeah, that was the process of when I was a teacher. So much downtime. I really think that cutting this federal funding, if a teacher, you know, is, I mean, I don't know what the rebound of this is going to look like what's going to actually happen to the education system. But if there's far few teachers that are in buildings, maybe they'll try to restructure the way they're teaching these kids in different ways. Like, I remember when I was in elementary school, we used to have like small reading groups, and we'd have to get together with each other and hold each other accountable. And obviously you can still goof off in those scenarios and stuff, but maybe that's one way you combat not having as many teachers in the classroom. Like, we can be able to figure out, because ultimately we're all stupid right now anyways. No one's learning anything the way it's been. These kids, like you said before, there's kids that don't know how to read and write that are definitely old enough to where they shouldn't be knowing how to read and write.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, man. I think,
will say this, and this is just what I've read, and you can fact check me on it, but from everything I've read, there is no research that shows that technology has helped students learn better than what they were doing before. Zero research that shows that it's actually benefit the kids because they now have Chromebooks and they can do things online. Now, I will say that it helps you in the college piece because they kind of do the same thing. But it also kind of helps you in the workspace a little bit, because you do have a lot of technology you deal with in the workspace. But clearly it just depends on what you're doing. So, but the technology piece, I haven't seen the benefits, and again, the research doesn't show that it's actually helping. So why they're pouring all this money into it is one question, and I'm not even sure that's even necessarily a part of what they're taking away. Yeah. I think what they looked at is there's like thousands of people that are being paid through the government that are in the Department of Education. All of them make over $100,000. So $112,000 was actually the average that their rate was, which isn't even close to most teachers what they're making now. No, most of them start at 40. I think the average in Indiana is about 65,000. So
which we pay teachers pretty well.
Yeah, and that's like $40,000 to $50,000 less than what this person is doing in the federal government. And the reality is, what are they doing? What? Because they said that the federal government's percentage of that funding that goes to the schools was only 10%. All the funding that goes to schools comes from the state itself. And it's almost a similar situation as like the abortion situation, where Trump's not taking everything away. He's wanting the states to decide what they're going to do, and he wants to stop the waste that he feels like is happening in this department. So, I mean, I've read all kinds of stuff. There's concerns about Title I, which deals with the poor students. How are they still going to get that funding? From what I've read, none of that's going away. It's just being given to a different department. That's my understanding. Everybody's asking about the Pell Grants and grants that help fund some of the scholarships. Again, everything I've read saying it's just going to a different department. So a department that's already in place, so they may have to spend a little bit more in that department. I think Department of Treasury is going to handle a lot of that stuff. But it's going to, I mean, it's still going to be there. It's just not going to come from the same group of people that it used to come from. So, and then there's the civil discrimination piece that they're concerned. Well, if that goes away, because that's a part of the department, will certain students be discriminated against if they have disabilities, if they have IEPs, if even of racial things, like how are they going to monitor that? Again, all that's being shifted to the Department of Justice. So they're going to keep an eye on it, but there's just going to be a different group of people looking at it. Ultimately, it's to save money that has, in a lot of people's view, has not been spent well, and it's not proving results. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing as if you hire somebody at a position and they're not doing what they were supposed to do. There's no results behind what they're doing. You can't continue to pay that person because that's not good for your business. It goes back to the same conversation we just had of it's a business decision. If you're not meeting these standards, whatever those are, we have to let you go.
Yeah. I mean, I think that whenever it comes to the education system, man, like, one of the things that I remember growing up was, because I was poor growing up. Surprise, I didn't come from a rich family. And whenever I was in 6th grade at Stout Field, they had packed lunches for kids who qualified for that type of money. And so I'm thinking, like, whoever's paying for that, if that's like a federal aid grant, things like that I could see as being an issue. Like, another thing that I loved about being in the Ben Davis area, which was a far more rich district than like Speedway, being small town, they were able to go on field trips constantly. There were so many field trips. Whenever I went to a small school, we had like one field trip a year, and it was to a university, basically, just to visit some university, walk the campus, and that was it. Like, when I was in 6th grade, we literally went to a Fever game downtown. Like, we went and saw the Christmas Carol. And so I always think, like, who pays for that stuff? And parents might have to pay like $20. Like, I remember we went to Chicago when I was at Ben Davis, and we went to the Navy Pier, and I remember, like, I'm able to take this ride 3 hours, get in here, ride all the rides I want, and I think we paid like $40 or something like that. Like, it was pretty cheap, whatever it was, and then a little pocket money too to buy souvenirs while you're there. But that's a far more expensive trip than that. So there has to be some type of funding that's coming towards it. So I remember always thinking about that, and if it's like the Department of Education that's writing these checks, sending these, I just hope that things like that do carry on in whatever direction Trump's going to be going with it. Obviously, we don't know. We're not there yet. Yep. There's nothing but speculation. And obviously, when it comes to media, it's going to be fear. It's going to be, all what could go wrong with this.
Yep. The other side, where this is the perfect plan and this is exactly how it's going to happen, and it's probably something in the middle. Yeah,
there's going to be things that were probably like, oh, probably shouldn't have done that. And then other things like, oh, that's a way better idea. Let's not waste money with having comfort circles in rooms to where a student can just walk there, close their eyes, ignore everything, come back when you're ready. Yeah. That's $2,000 to maintain that.
This is a way longer conversation that we're not going to get into right now, but I do just want to make the point that as looking at the education system, I think there needs to be a 100% deep dive by somebody who's impartial to the whole thing about what it is that's being taught in the actual classroom. Because there's so many things, in my opinion. Okay, you're challenging the student. There's critical thinking, sure. Those are great words. Okay, great buzzwords. Those are great words in education. But are you actually preparing them for when they get out of those schools? Mm-hmm. And the strong majority of students, I would say, when they get out into the real world, were not even remotely prepared for what the workforce was going to look like, how they're supposed to handle taxes, credit cards, checks, how they're supposed to manage their money, how they're supposed to just be a citizen in society. I don't think, and I'm adamant about this, and I have been for years, that our education system is preparing those kids for that purpose. Yeah. And a lot of times they're just pushing them through the system to get them out of the system. Good luck to you. And then what happens? Those individuals end up going into society not prepared, and they end up causing problems. Yeah, that's again, strictly my opinion, but that's just what I continue to see. And I think somebody just needs to look at, okay, after 8th grade, which is there's a solid realm of things that I think you need from 1st to 8th grade. Freshman to senior, what are they spending their time actually learning? And is it going to help them?
I'll tell you what they're doing. They're teaching them authority. That's what school... I'm being dead serious. This is like whenever I graduated from high school, being a young kid, now I know, like, there's solid teachers, you know. Just like there's a bunch of bad teachers, there's a bunch of good teachers that, just like I try to do in every circumstance, try to figure out what you can do to make the small little impacts on somebody that could mean a much larger thing later on down the road. Like plant seeds. That's what you can do in little interactions. But the system as a whole, the education system, it's built to establish an authority, establish that you need to be at a certain place at a certain time, and then you have a boss that's in that room that's telling you what you need to do in order to get his approval at the end of the semester and pass his class.
Yep.
Like, that's what the structure is built for. It's supposed to be pushing people into industrialized careers as America has said it.
Yep.
And I think that there could be benefits to a certain degree. I mean, that's literally what you do as an adult. You go to your job, you do what boss says so that you can get paid. That's the only difference. Now you're actually getting paid and able to contribute and buy your own things in society.
Where's our NIL deals in high school? Hey, if you show up to school and you're wearing this and you tell your friends to go buy it.
No, they're not ever going to get paid, because that is glorified babysitting. You're doing the parents a favor, because since the parents have to go to work and make that pay to pay that rent, you know what I'm saying? We'll watch your kids for you. And we'll teach them the same things to where they can do that later on in their life, where they can go to work and then use that money to pay for their kid going through school, pay the bills, you know, the car, the rent, the electric, all the stuff that mounts up to where at the end of the week you have a little bit left, to where you can go get that Cane's chicken. We're not sponsored, but this is why I work all week.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely truth to that. I'm just trying to think of the positions I've been in, of where I work, where I don't... And most employers want you to just get the job done. And they want you to do well enough to where it's not closing their business down.
Survive the day.
It's not like they're expecting a level 10 every time you walk in that door. Now, a lot of employers would say that's what they want, but they don't even do that themselves. So let's just be honest about that part. But our school is preparing a kid to... Because you don't do that in a classroom. You go into a classroom, you sit down, you're quiet, you listen, and they hope you pick up what they're putting down. But in the workforce, it's a bit on yourselves in order to... All right, I got to go make this happen. Which is kind of, I mean, I guess you could sway it either way. I question the topics. I question the things that they're pushing out, because, again, I just don't always feel like it's preparing the kid when they get out into the real world that this is how the real world works. Like you live or die, and it's up to you how much money you make, how much opportunities you create for yourself. I mean, it's not. Some people are going to have a better hand than others by far, but you said it forever. It's a lot about who you know. Well, a lot of kids, they could be going and doing internships. They could be going to businesses and sitting in on meetings. We don't really allow that. We don't even have, you kind of get that in college a little bit. Yeah. But those are great chances to then go allow them to meet that person that's going to say, "Hey, I see something in this kid. Let's keep an eye on him, because when he's available, we want to hire him on."
Well, I do think, because, I mean, you got to think, like, what age are we talking about here? I wouldn't want some freshman, like, going and starting to put on his big boy pants already. Like, he's still a kid. Yeah. He can still enjoy doing things like the basketball team, the football team. Yeah. If you're doing internships and you're already getting in that mindset of working, I don't necessarily like that.
Well, junior, senior year, I think that's the good time to do it.
I think college is, I think senior year, you should start learning fundamentals of what the general process is of having a job. Like we talked about earlier, learning credit card, learning bank account, credit scores, paying your bill, budgeting, making sure you're setting money aside. They should be taught all those type of things. But when it comes to like specific career options, I think a lot of people do their internships after they graduate from high school. They would go to a company for a year, do an internship, see if they like it. If they do, they'll get hired on. But I think that when you're still in high school, man, you're still a kid, you should be focusing on sports, your final year of football, all of that stuff. And the way I would restructure back to what they're learning, like the actual content of what they're learning, I like more of a elective style teaching where you give kids 30 different options. You let them pick which pathways they want to go down. Yeah. Let them experiment with it. If you're talking from kindergarten, which a kindergartner would be like 6 years old or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And
5 or 6.
You give like the developmental stage about 4 years right there, just teaching everyone the general basics like they kind of do. Along with reading time and color your pictures if you want, go have recess. Yeah. Like that type of phase in life, you should keep that. But around middle school, younger high school area, they should have a bunch of options that they can choose from. Yeah. You don't have to meet a certain amount of credits in order to graduate from this university. You just have to stay enrolled in these courses. If you go through the course and participate fully in the course, then you get your passing certificate. But that's how, because test scores, man, I don't like how test scores are, because tests are subjective in their own sense of how you're doing it. I used to hate written answers. I used to hate it when teacher would have written answers on tests. I love multiple choice. 25% chance of getting that.
But you gotta love true and false.
Exactly. But then there's a spectrum of stuff, because even like long paragraphs of writing, like you had to write an essay. Kind of stuff, yeah. I was okay with essays. I was a good storyteller, especially if it was like language arts. Yeah. It was like start a story with a climax and an ending or whatever.
Yep.
I could do that, no problem. But just the style of tests are reflective of this kid's intelligence, but all of the tests are the same, and not every kid is the same.
Yep. I think there's a piece of applicability to when I'm doing this, why am I doing this? Like explaining that when a kid comes in. The other part would be to, I think, also highlight some of the technical stuff that you can do in the working world. Not just like, hey, you got to go to college so that you can get this degree to do this thing. Well, you could also be a plumber, which pays extremely well. There's not a lot of them out there. You could start your own business that way. Yeah. How do I do that?
And that's what I mean by like having elective style teaching. Like that should be a class that could be taught, plumbing or car mechanic, kind of like Area 31 at
and some schools are starting to do that now too, where they have an off-site kind of thing where they can train you in some of those pieces. But I think I don't see a huge push for that. So maybe a high school really pushes a kid to say, hey, like you're good with your mind, you can think quickly. Maybe electrician is something you need to look at, or maybe, an architect, or maybe, something that is hands-on skill-based. A lot of people, if they get a head start on it, I think that would be huge for them.
Well, I'll tell you what choice is always going to be there for them. The U.S. military coming in there making kids doing push-ups during lunch. Yeah. We want you in the Marine Corps. Well, come work for your government.
I have an enormous amount of respect for anybody that's in the military and does it. I was never man enough to do that, and nor would I ever be. And some of the stuff that you guys are having to do, that our government has forced you to do for so many years, is it's highly respectable, and I'll always appreciate that.
Yep. I used to do my push-ups to get the little lanyard for sure.
There you go.
Yep.
I forgot to announce this. I don't even think you know this. Going back to the Trump gold cards, okay? This just got announced today. Kay and Isaac have a platinum card for just $1 million.
Only $1 million?
So
that's it?
That's it. You can pay us, and you can hang out. We'll take you to dinner, and
I'll go.
you know, you can even, you know, I'll let you drive.
Oh, your car, right?
Yeah, my truck.
Yeah.
So
I mean, $1 million. Okay, you could drive mine too.
I just wanted to throw it out there. We just started that, so we'll get it up, get a link out there. But
$1
million.
Oh, only $1 million?
That's a $4 million cheaper than what Trump's offering.
Drop in the bucket.
That's a pretty good deal. So I think, you know,
I think
we'll probably get 1,000 people.
Yeah, you really sold that, didn't you? I think we're going to be set after this podcast.
We can't give you citizenship, so can't really do that.
I mean, marriage. I'm currently on the market. $1 million.
You think about it? Consider it.
I bite the bullet 3-4 years, maybe 5 years. We can have a happy marriage every time they come to our house, hugging up on each other.
There you go.
Hey.
Okay, so be looking out for the Kay and Isaac Platinum card because it's in production right now.
All right, is that all we got for this one?
That's it.
All right, until next time. Peace out.